By the time I get this video uploaded, we're going to be about 24 hours away from the full launch of Dune Awakening, and I have spent the past 5 days really dialing in the speed running strategy, which is going to be landing us a sand bike within 30 minutes and an excellent base location where we're going to have access to late game ores as well as all of the water that we could possibly need, all within the very first couple of hours of playing the game. And today I'm going to be diving in and breaking down this refined strategy. So hopefully we're all getting a head start inside of Dune Awakening. Let's go ahead and start off with some baseline information that we're going to need. First off, you're going to need to start the game in unlocked mode. If you don't start in unlocked mode, you are unable to research the bike early.
You French fry when you pizza, you're gonna have a bad time.
There's also some baseline information in regards to the resources that we're going to need to gather in order to even craft this bike that I want to go over very quickly. Starting off, you're going to need 245 or more scrap metal. There is a lot of scrap metal near the lab, so if you don't manage to get 245 before you get there, it isn't the end of the world. But you are going to need this 245 scrap metal like right when you get there. So definitely try to hit it up on your way there. On top of the metal scrap though, you're also going to need 380 or more copper ore. And there are not a lot of these copper ores located right around the lab. They're there, but you have to go out of your way to get to them. So make sure that you're hitting up every single copper ore that you see on your way to the first trial and on your way to the lab, because you're going to need these 380 copper ore to even craft the bike and the chemical refinery in order to make the fuel cell to run the bike. On top of that, you're always going to want to be picking up as much fiber as possible, and then you're going to need 30 or more fuel cells, 5 of which you can use to power up your base for the limited time you need to power it, and then 25 of which you're going to need to craft the fuel cell to run the sand bike. There are a couple of the cube fuel cell packs that you can break open right near the lab, so it's not entirely necessary, but you do need these, so you might as well hit up a couple of them if you manage to see them on your way. Now that we have a baseline of the materials I need to gather on our way to the lab, let's go ahead and jump on into this step by step here. Right after we run away from this worm, we're obviously going to want to be making our way to the very first trial. One of the very first things we need to grab is some fiber. After we get the fiber, we're going to unlock the makeshift clothing as well as the Mala pistol recipe, just so we don't have to come back into this screen. And then we're going to craft the full set of makeshift clothing and equip it. And then as soon as we get some scrap metal, we're going to craft the Mala pistol as well as some ammo and equip that as well. Right around the time we get the Mala pistol crafted is when we are going to be unlocking our very first skill point, and that is going to be going into Bindu Sprint. This is going to help us dash across the desert. If you're not picking the Bene Gesserit to start off with, you can slot anything into this really, or if you don't need to spend the skill point right away, it's not that big of a deal. However, if you're picking Bene Gesserit, definitely slot it in because it's going to help you run from the trial to the lab. It's going to help you get to places in this early portion of the game a little bit quicker. We're going to get to the first trial and complete it, after which we're going to be moving over to the lab and dropping down our very first little starter base. I'm hoping to get this base somewhere on the right side of the lab because there are a few copper ores just on that side, just in case I didn't manage to get all the way up to 380 on my way over here. But regardless, we're going to be setting up a little quick base here. We don't need walls. We don't need a roof. We just need a little 3x3, even a 2x2 would probably squeeze everything you need into it. And we're going to be putting down a generator, an ore refinery, as well as a fabricator. As soon as we get those down, we're going to put whatever spare fuel cells we have into the generator and then immediately start crafting all of our copper ingots. It would be really beneficial for you to have all 380 or 400 or whatever copper ingots crafting at this point in time. That way, they're all fully completed by the time we're done with the next step. Otherwise, you're going to be waiting for some extra copper to craft. But regardless, after you drop your copper into the refinery, finally, you're going to want to head in and complete this lab. This thing is incredibly easy, and chances are on day one, there's going to be the enemies already cleared, if not other people running this lab with you. But even if you happen to be alone, this is entirely possible with just the regular Mala pistol. This lab is absolutely not a problem. You're going to want to make sure that you're searching all of the chests inside of this lab and going into this little secret back room here. First off, the chests contain materials that you're going to need in order to craft this bike, but also inside of this back room, you get the item required in order to unlock the planetologist class. After you complete this lab, you're going to want to head up and turn in the planetologist quest in order to unlock the class. And right as I unlock this class, we're going to be putting in 4 skill points into it. One of them is going to be going into Suspensor Pad, and then we're going to be slotting 3 into the Scientist tree in order to boost not only our mining capabilities, but also our dew gathering capabilities. These are both things that we're getting ready to be doing a lot of, so it's definitely something you're going to want to be sure to unlock right away. After this, though, we should be able to head down to our base where we should have enough copper to not only craft the entire bike, but also craft a small chemical refinery and make ourselves a fuel cell. After you craft the fuel cell, be sure to demolish the refinery so you can get a few copper ingots back, because you're not coming back to this base. Once we have this sand bike, we are ready to move over to the trading post, start the trooper quest, and move into the second phase of this speed run. This is where things get a little bit different from my previous speed runs. We're going to start doing some things which are going to greatly benefit us. Now that we have our sand bike and we've started our trooper quest here at the trading post, we're changing things up a little bit compared to what we did at the day one for early access, mainly because in order to unlock the ability to unlock the Ornithopter, you need to have spent 300 intel points. This means as a solo here that we need to both balance our resource grind as well as our intel point grind. So while we are doing this trooper quest here, we're going to do things a little bit differently. To start off, we're still going to ride these ridges right here, collecting any granite or fiber or maybe a little bit of copper that we see, because we're going to need this granite to build our base where we're going in the end of this. But instead of going directly to the shipwreck, we're instead gonna hit up this intel right here, right? We're gonna swoop through that intel, then go to the shipwreck. We're gonna complete this entire shipwreck right here, mainly because we need the Caliph's Drinker schematic that comes out of it. This is a dagger that's going to collect blood from the enemies that you slash with it, and blood is actually a pretty big role in my whole water gathering process that, again, I'll get to here in a minute. But then after this shipwreck, we're then going to start to complete this trooper quest. In order to complete this trooper quest, there are 3 caves that we need to hit up. I believe it's this one, and this one. I'm not entirely sure on that last one. It points you to all 3 of them, and it doesn't matter. There are a lot of caves in this area, and we are still going to hit up at least 4 of them. So we're going to head from the shipwreck over to the very first trooper cave and complete that. Then we're going to be completing this intel point right here. I should point out that when we're grabbing this intel, we're not going to be going in here trying to loot every chest and clear every enemy. I'm going to mainly be trying to just get in and get out. And I'm hoping that because it's day one that there's going to be a lot of people who are in these places trying to clear the enemies, and it's going to be a lot easier to get in and get out as quickly as possible. But after we complete this intel right here, we're then going to go through this cave, hit that, followed up by the second trooper quest cave, and then finally we're going to hit up the final trooper quest cave. And instead of heading directly back to the trooper quest and then across the gap here, we're actually going to go all the way down and hit up these 4 intel spots before we go back up to the trooper quest. This is going to give us a total of 17 extra skill points before we even unlock the trooper quest. And then after that, that's when we're going to head across the gap and abandon our base. After we abandon our base, we're then going to be working our way over to this trial again However, we're going to follow the same pattern here, and we're going to knock out these 2 intel spots before we get this trial done. This trial unlocks the sand compactor and is fairly easy to complete, but after it's completed, we're then going to work our way over to the big rock and knock out 3 more intel spots, being this one, and this one. We're basically going to ride the outside of this canyon here and hit up those 3 intel spots. Again, hopefully as quickly as possible. Real get in, get out type scenario. I'm not trying to clear these entire spots. This step in the plan right here is going to give us a total of 25 intel points, as well as the sand compactor. And this is going to set us up really nice for the next step in the plan, which is heading to our first base location. And again, this is where we shift a little bit from our original plan, because instead of heading up here and setting up a base at this bear claw right here, we're actually going to move a little bit further north and move into the next region and actually set up a base either right here or right here. In both of these locations, there is a massive dew field. Inside of the early access build that I'm playing on, a group actually set up a base right here at this location, and it is incredible. This is a spot that you want to race to right here, because the amount of dew flowers in this area just really must be loading these guys up with water. I'll try to get some footage up in the background of this base, but this thing is absolutely incredible and is most definitely a spot that I want to nab here. Not only does it look really good, but like I said, there is a crazy amount of dew flowers. They even had 2 massive water cisterns built up, and I'd imagine that they needed them because every single night, if you hit those things up at the optimal time, you're literally going to be maxing out your water. If you pair this with blood purifiers going, you're gonna have no problem whatsoever crafting any of the ingots that you need. If this spot's taken, like I said, there's another spot right just north of it that's another massive dew field. It might even be bigger, it just doesn't look as good. And in seeing these 2 things, there may actually be dozens of really big dew fields out in the map somewhere. Let me know if you guys have any really good locations. But it's not just the dew fields producing us water that gets my attention. We also gain access to carbon ore all throughout this area right here, which is required to craft steel. And for any of the iron that we need, it really is incredibly easy to make your way across this gap and farm up all the iron you could possibly need. And then for aluminum, we're even right next to that, because right here inside of this crack, there's just 3 aluminum ores stacked on top of each other, and you can just continue riding that crack up in a really nice aluminum farm loop. Let me know down in the comments if you guys want me to break that down. The crystals that you need in order to make the carbon paste are all the way over to the east inside of the Haga Rift, and this is by far the furthest trip that I need to make to gather any sort of resource that I'm gonna need right away. But we're gonna have a sand bike with a storage here, so in reality, it's only gonna take 1 or 2 trips maximum before I have enough to make an Ornithopter. And once we get that Ornithopter unlocked, harvesting entire inventories of resources like this that are far away becomes trivial. Like I said before, intel is also a major grind that you have to put in order to unlock this Ornithopter. However, the further you go into this map, the more points that you're getting with each of these intel spots. In Jabal, you're looking at getting 10 per intel, and then over in the eastern shield wall, which is just to the north of Jabal, you're looking at getting 20 per intel, and these are a little bit harder to get because they do require a key card in order to access. So there's a couple more steps that you need to take. However, I was getting these intel points all the way up in the shield wall region while I was still wearing the very first tier of still suit and a sniper. So it is entirely possible to knock these deeper intel points out even with some lower level gear. And that paired with the leveling that you'll get for doing stuff in these areas really helps towards that intel point grind. Some of the things that my first main base is really going to need to focus on is blood purifiers, water storage, item storage, or refiners, and then generators. And when it comes to items that I need to maximize efficiency, we need some really good leader johns as well as some really good blood bags because, like I said, our water grind here is going to be a lot of filling up our blood purifiers and then harvesting dew at night and kind of like repeating that process while we're mining at the same time and then taking breaks in between to go and grind out some intel. So we're also going to need a high tier sickle in order to harvest the water from the dew. But probably most importantly, we're going to need a bike storage to throw on our sand bike. Riding around with an inventory is definitely not something to sleep on. Originally, I was using the booster a lot to get around a little bit faster, but in doing that, I was really cutting the amount of resources that I could gather in half, if not more. Overall, I think this refined speedrun here sets us up really nice to power through some of that mid-game grind that we got stuck on our original plan. And we're going to be running this speedrunning strategy live right here on YouTube as well as Twitch, where hopefully we're going to really be able to set up and compete with some guilds inside of Dune Awakening, even as a solo. I'll have a link to the Twitch down in the description. Be sure to stop by on day one and see how our progress is going. If you managed to make it this far in the video, comment made it down below so I can give you an extra shout out. Also, hit that like button on your way out of here. It really does help these videos get pushed into the algorithm. But other than that, I hope you guys all have an amazing day. I'm out.